2023, and this is Waves, and I'm Drew Lentz, the Wireless Nerd. And Waves is a weekly podcast where I'm going to start talking about what's going on in tech, what's making waves, if you will. I'm going to focus on three things: what's new, what's next, and what's now. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about what's happening in the industry with regards to wireless and Wi-Fi, but also some of the other things that are happening, because this was an interesting week. A lot of good things going on. And also, for the first time, what I'm doing is this is actually going out streaming on both my Twitter account and on my YouTube account. So if you're watching this, please drop a note in here. I want to see real quick if it shows that I'm live, which is kind of neat. I thought it'd be fun. Why not? Yeah, it shows I'm live. That's kind of cool, man. You know, I figured might as well take some comments and make it an interactive thing. Again, this is only meant to be about 10 to 15 minutes long, so don't expect any more than that. Just a quick overview of what's happening, but just a way to get information out there of things that I think are affecting us in our business day to day. There's a lot that happens in wireless and in Wi-Fi, and I think that it has a lot more to do with the entire industry overall than just whatever it is that we're focusing on that day to day. So what I will kick off with is what's new, and I think the Raspberry Pi 5 is my story of the week, man. That's the fun new thing that's happening. I really am excited. Been a fan of Raspberry Pi for a really long time, and the Pi 5 is definitely packing a punch. It's got a new Broadcom quad-core 64-bit processor in there. It's 3 generations ahead of the one that's used in the Pi 4. So that's going to be pretty great. Should be faster. It also consumes less power, which in turn means it should be running cooler, which is phenomenal. I remember one of the first times I got the Pi 2 and the Pi 3, and I loaded on the little video game system. You had to get that extra fan for it to make sure that it didn't overheat. But I'm excited about the Pi 5. I think that those Pis always open up a lot of opportunity. Two things that I think are a little bit different that let me down: the dual band 802.11ac on there, so still 802.11ac. So no support for Wi-Fi 6. Definitely no support for Wi-Fi 6E. Kind of a bummer, but that's okay. You can always plug something in the side and make it work. It is going to be slightly more expensive than the Pi 4. The version with 4 gig RAM is $60, and the 8 gig version is $80. And also, please take note, because of the changes in the layout of the ports, you will need to buy a new case. So my buddies over at the WLAN Pi Pro, I'm excited to see what the next iteration of the case is going to be. You guys have your work cut out for you, but that's the beauty of that project. Big community project, has the ability to go back and 3D print that, and people from the community can definitely help out. So that's going to be really exciting. Excited to see what happens there. Also this week, what happened new, OpenAI intros voice chat to ChatGPT. So now not only can you type in, bare stuff, but you can turn around and you can have a conversation with it, and it can talk back to you. And I think that that's pretty incredible. It also has to do with the reason I think that this applies to wireless is when you think about interacting with ChatGPT or any type of machine interface, one of the things that you want is immediate access to that. You don't want to send a message and then wait for a while for it to come back and say the answer is blah 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 blah. You want that immediate interaction. Sorry, I'm blowing up. This is great. My freaking trying to figure out how to mute my watch real quick because I keep getting all these alerts. But I think that that's one of the key things that's going to come into play is now voice is no longer just voice over IP, if you will, no more SIP, on its own. It's being able to carry on conversations with machine interfaces that are going to answer quicker than humans are, and making sure that information can get across to you as soon as possible. So latency is going to be the name of the game when it comes to next iterations of that. I haven't messed with it yet. I'm going to load it up on the phone, and I'm going to see what that voice chat looks like with ChatGPT today, so that should be pretty cool. So that covers my what's new for going on this week. What I want to look at now is what's happening now. What was making waves this week other than the new product announcements, and one of the ones that comes up is just be warned, in 2 days at 2:20 p.m. Eastern, that's 1:20 Central, and that's noon Eastern, right? 3 hours back, 11 on the West Coast. The Federal Emergency Management Association, the FCC, are going to be sending out notifications to all phones, radios, TVs. Radios. How many people still use radios? I do. I'm a huge fan of the C. Crane Company, but that goes back to listening to Art Bell as a kid and listening to my C. Crane radio and putting it on my wish list year after year until I was old enough where I could afford to buy one for myself. Shout out to C. Crane Company. Feel free to send me a radio, y'all. I love them. I love all the new ones. But FEMA's going to be sending out, FEMA and FCC are going to send out notifications to all cell phones, radios, and TVs to test the National Wireless Emergency Alert System and ensure that the system is ready for a real crisis. So be ready. That thing's going to go off, and when it does, it's going to make a lot of noise on every device within close proximity. So be ready for that. That's on October 4th at 2:20 p.m. That news came out this week. Also, something that I thought was awesome. I'm a golf fan. I've always been a golf fan. And as anyone who is a golf fan probably watched this weekend was the Ryder Cup. And I'm always looking at that, looking for Wi-Fi stands in the background. I'm always trying to see if I can find a Wi-Fi stand. I've seen them on CNN and ABC and Weather Channel and ESPN and the Raiders games and everywhere else. But here I was looking in the background at the Ryder Cup for some Wi-Fi stands. But the story was behind the scenes with what was going on with a completely cloud managed, I believe, or hybrid managed solution for Wi-Fi and 5G running the guest experience at the Ryder Cup. And I thought that was really cool. There's so much convergence that happens in the industry, and there's so many different Wi-Fi protocols and different, or wireless protocols and different connectivity mechanisms and mediums that are out there. For years, I've just been looking forward to the day when it's just one thing, one dashboard to rule them all, where you look at it and say, here's my 4G, here's my 5G, here's my Wi-Fi, here's my IoT, here's everything under one beautiful dashboard, one pane of glass, if you will. And I'm not sure that that's what happened, but that's obviously what the news stories made it sound like. So looking forward to seeing what the outcome of that is going to be, paying attention. The Ryder Cup is always a cool way to show off what happens in golf. And I love watching what happens on the golf courses with wireless. PGA has a great Wi-Fi deployment across all their stuff. There's an incredible company based out of the Northeast that does all that for them, and they do a bang-up job at every show. And if you've never been to a golf tournament, walk by and you'll see all the APs hanging out everywhere. It's really cool. You'll see some 5G devices out there also. But seeing what's happening with that and looking at it as a model for what could happen in a city or on a campus or whatever it is, that's one way to look at it. Also, the rapid deployment component of it to me is super insane. They run miles and miles of fiber optic cable, and they put out tons of generators, and they do a ton of wireless. And the wireless at Ryder Cup to me was interesting because they talked about 5G powering the Wi-Fi access points, and the reason they had to do it was because of the historic nature of the field that they were playing on, of the golf course that they were playing on. They couldn't trench cable, they couldn't run cable. There was a lot that they couldn't do, so they were using 5G backhaul for the Wi-Fi and apparently controlling it into one management platform. Not sure if it's a single pane of glass or whatever, but definitely something that I thought was pretty neat, how wireless makes its way into fun activities on the side. Also, what's happening, net neutrality is back on the table, right on the heels of Mobile World Congress America, which started and wrapped up last week, right at MWCA. There was an interesting article where one of the commissioners was going to give this whole speech about what's going on at the FCC and all these amazing things that are happening. And right before he did the speech, Chairwoman Rosenworcel pops up and says, hey, we're going to put net neutrality back on the table. We're going to talk about net neutrality access. And apparently the commissioner ripped up their speech and then gave an entirely different speech. But it's going to be interesting to see how that affects everyone. Having worked at one of the larger carriers in the U.S., it's interesting to see how all of that comes into play. Net neutrality is a pretty awesome thing in one regard, but in the other regard, it's not. And so I think there's the whole idea of, is it something that people can manage on their own? Is it something that companies can manage on their own? Are they being good stewards of the signals and everything that they're putting out there? And, are they taking care of it? So it'll be interesting to see that argument come back. Mrs. Rosenworcel definitely showing Chairwoman Rosenworcel showing that she's not scared to pick up the baton on that fight. So that's pretty interesting. One other thing I want to talk about now was what's happening with SAG-AFTRA. It's interesting because that, I think there's so many different things that can happen because of that. And part of their strike had to do with AI. And so I always pay special attention when it comes to that. Again, we kicked off the show today talking about voice in ChatGPT, and I think AI is just going to continually add more and more to what we do on a day-to-day basis. And so the details on the agreement, per the agreement, AI cannot be used to write or rewrite scripts, and AI-generated writing cannot be considered source material. That would prevent the writers from losing out on writing credits due to AI. So basically, the strike says if I'm a writer on a show, I can go out and I can use AI tools to write it. I still get the credit for it. Okay. I mean, that's a middle ground. It's definitely a middle ground. On an individual level, writers can choose to use AI tools if they so desire. However, a company cannot mandate that writers use certain AI tools while working on a production. Studios must also tell writers if they're given any AI-generated materials to incorporate into a work. This is definitely a middle ground, because you can see if you've got the writers that are using AI tools to generate the same content that AI could generate on its own, Hollywood, call me. Like, I'll punch in the same key phrases into a script to generate something for you, and I'll just charge you half. I mean, just give me a quarter of whatever it is. I guess that's not saying much, because the cost of living and everything that they're paying them. Obviously pay was a big part of it. So I joke about it, but at the same time, I think that's the root of the issue: is a writer a writer if they're using AI, and the writers are saying, hey, we can use whatever we want to it's our ideas that we're putting down to make happen. And I think that there's much more in context here. It's not just about SAG-AFTRA. It's about how we do our day-to-day operations. And this touches back a little bit on what I talked about last week, which is when you get to a point where your network is automating itself and your network is running all these AI tools and all this, all these AI ops, it really frees you up to do the things that you can focus on for your day-to-day tasks, because you're not worried about the mundane things that are happening. What you're worried about is the big picture, the big ticket items. And so, having the focus on that, I think, is awesome. And in a technology company, or in what we do in our roles day to day, we try and focus on that. How do we do our jobs better? How do we do them faster? How do we get mean time to resolution? What tools and services do we have available to help us do what we need to do in a better way? And I think AI is going to add a lot to that. It already is. We're seeing AI ops jump out everywhere, across entire networks, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's wired network, whatever it is. But it's definitely making waves, if you will, of what's going on in the IT industry. So to see that there's an industry like the motion picture industry and the writers, industry, that are trying to limit how much AI can do, maybe that's something that we need to be looking at. Or is it? Because it's like if I'm a network administrator, it's like our CEO telling the CTO or the network admin, hey, you can't use AI tools to do what you're doing, or hey, you can't use AI tools to do that. You just have to do what you're trained and certified to do. And that's interesting, because you can use tools to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that pops up and starts to make its way into our industry. Anyway, that being said, that's what's new. That's what's now. What's next? Oh, man. One of the things that got me when I'm talking about AI also is Meta. What Meta did, being Meta alumni, I still pay close attention to everything that happens at that company. Still have lots of friends over there. And they did some incredible stuff this past week in, new product introductions. I'm a big fan of the Ray-Ban glasses and, being able to use those to record videos and take pictures and do all kinds of neat stuff. And now they're talking about using that to process things, looking at a billboard and having it translate and speak into your ear what the billboard says. They talked about, being able to visually identify things and save them so that it provides context whenever you ask questions to the AI. And that leads into the second part of what they're doing. There are large language models called Llama. And I think Llama is going to be pretty insane very quickly. The reason why is they just introduced 28 new voices of people that you can interact with from an AI perspective. Mr. Beast being one of them. My kid's a Beast fan, right? So am I. I'm not going to lie. Mr. Beast is pretty awesome. But what's interesting is now, if you think about, they've got Mr. Beast and they have Snoop Dogg and they have all these different celebrities that you're going to be able to interact with in their AI. As that ramps up, I want to think about how quickly they're going to be able to collect a ton of data about building that large language model. They're going to start to get this influx of data because they've made it fun. You want to talk to a celebrity, jump on. And that is a data collection mechanism that's huge compared to ChatGPT, which, granted, a lot of people are using ChatGPT and a lot of people know about ChatGPT. But now, if you can talk to a celebrity that is a skin for ChatGPT, oh, God, now you just open up the floodgates for the amount of questions and the amount of personality and the amount of information that can be obtained and data that can be used to build that large language model. So what's next for me is watching what Meta's going to do with that. Because if this works the way that Zuck probably wants it to work, this is such an enticing way to feed data into the system. And that leads to the next one, which is that elections are going to be nuts this season, absolutely nuts. There's a lot of stuff going on X or Twitter already. And I don't even know what to call it. Do you call it X or do you call it Twitter? I don't even know which one to call it. But either way, calling it X, Elon Musk has confirmed that they're cutting around half of the global team devoted to limiting disinformation and election fraud on the platform, including the head of the group, according to 3 people familiar with the situation. To me, that's interesting because now if you start to see the whole trend of AI and everything that's coming in, now as it makes its way into social media, there's not going to be anything there to block some of that noise, it seems like, when it comes to X. And by getting away with that, by removing that, now you open up the floodgates for people to post and talk and comment and so on and so forth. And, I don't know what that has to do with wireless yet, but I'm looking at that going, man, that's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how much disinformation there is out there that's going to be leveraging AI to do that. To tie back onto the llama thing, and again, I like to think about how this makes, like, I'm a wireless person. People who follow me are probably wireless people, and you're wondering how that ties into wireless. When you're talking about a headset that you're communicating with, it's processing images, it's visualizing images that you're talking to, and it's going back to the cloud to process in real time. This is just yet another device that people are going to carry on with them, carry on their face or carry in their pocket. And it just goes to show why I think the move with Wi-Fi 7 coming out, when the move to multi-link optimization and aggregation is so important, because these are going to need these high-speed conduits to go from your head to your pocket to the cloud, and all that can be processed using MLO, using Wi-Fi 7. So I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, that being said, that's my 15 minutes for the day. This is Waves and Wireless Nerd. It's Monday, October 2nd. Join me next week, Monday, October 9th. We'll talk about some more stuff, what's new, what's now, and what's next. But as always, I appreciate it. My kid says I'm sus if I don't have 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube. And also my wife said that she would take me to Mexico for a weekend if I hit 1,000 subs. So please do me a favor. Visit my YouTube channel, youtube.com/wirelessnerd. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate that. Also, I've gotten 2 opportunities for sponsorships. So coming soon, these shows are going to be sponsored. This show and the last show are brought to you by Wi-Fi Stand. Of course, WiFiStand.com for all of your temporary Wi-Fi mounting needs. Visit WiFiStand.com. In the future, I look forward to supporting more people that support me. Have yourself a wonderful week. Feel free to ask me questions or bring up ideas for next week's show. If you want to be a guest, hey, shoot me a message. Slide into those DMs. Anyway, have a wonderful week, y'all. We'll talk to you next week. See ya.